Well, oftentimes Jesus was asked to describe what the kingdom of heaven was like. What is it like, Jesus? They'd say, tell me about this kingdom of yours. And it was difficult to explain because oftentimes our words aren't adequate to describe what the kingdom of heaven is really like. And so it was difficult to understand, to wrap our minds around, because words really fail us when you're trying to understand and describe the kingdom. Words will never do to describe what the kingdom of heaven is like. And yet people ask Jesus all the time, Jesus, tell us what it's like. What is the kingdom that you speak about? Tell me about what that's like for us. And Jesus would try his best to try and understand how I can explain this to you, but it was just whatever you would say about the kingdom, it just wouldn't be enough. Wouldn't be enough. And that makes sense, actually, because God was never really meant to be a science experiment where you can wrap your mind around him and understand every little aspect of who he is and what the kingdom is like and all that stuff, where you can kind of wrap your mind around everything and understand every little detail about who God is. God's not meant to be like that. God is a God who's meant to be encountered, to be lived, to be experienced, not academically described like a textbook, or just to kind of understand it to all these various things. He's not a God that you can put underneath a microscope and kind of dissect it on different little areas and all that kind of stuff. But he is one to be experienced, one to be understood by how we understand our life, not just being, book smart, but experience of who God actually is. But I don't know if it's human nature, or I don't know if it's just the way in which our culture is, but we want to know things. We want to kind of unpack it, to kind of take it apart and understand how it works, and we want to do all these kinds of things. And this is how the disciples were with Jesus. They wanted to know how it all is going to work, Jesus. How is this kingdom going to work out? How is it that we understand how everything puts together? And the ironic thing, for the disciples at least, they had Jesus. The full manifestation of the kingdom, what it looked like in human form, walking with them. And they still didn't get it. They still didn't get it. We had Jesus who perfectly demonstrated what the kingdom of heaven is actually like in human form. He shows the fullness of God's love for those who are hurting and broken and away from him, the people that he would come to, those that are hungry and depressed and broken and all sorts of relationships falling apart, lonely, and he would come and he would feed and sacrificially serve and forgive and restore people. And they had the fullness of Jesus and the manifestation of the kingdom in their midst, and yet the disciples, they didn't get it, which I think is just something to think about. They didn't quite get it. They didn't quite understand it. So Jesus spoke to them and told them illustrations or parables about what the kingdom of heaven is like, illustrated with some kind of concrete examples of things that you can understand. And yet, Jesus tells multiple parables because even one parable isn't enough to really grasp around what the kingdom of heaven is like. So in this series of ours, we're trying to understand the kingdom of heaven as best we can, and how we can be kingdom people, how we can live in its current availability right here and right now, and how it can give shape to our life, both with our families and with our work environment, with our church environment, with the community at large, how we can shape our lives around the kingdom of heaven. How do we understand it? We're going to look at some of these illustrations that Jesus gives, some of these parables that he teaches about the kingdom of heaven, about what it's like, and how to live as kingdom people, with its values and its ways more a part of our life as well. So we're going to look at one of those parables this morning. But before we open up and look at that, let me pray for us, and we'll ask God to be with us. Jesus, it's humbling to come before your scriptures and to even attempt to use your words and to teach what you sought us to understand. We come recognizing that you are the teacher and that we are the student. So we come asking for you to teach us how it is that we might live our life in the current availability of your good kingdom. Give us ears to hear, hearts that are soft and responsive, and bodies that are ready to take action. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Well, we're going to look at a passage in Matthew, but before I jump into that, I want to just kind of have an understanding of how we're going to understand these parables. How do you understand parables in general? Grasp understanding of general teachings of Jesus. Jesus taught in parables for at least two basic main reasons. The first reason he taught in parables was to explain truth to people, to use an illustration to help understand a complicated and complex aspect like the kingdom of heaven in a more concrete way. So he used parables to help us understand truth. But on the other side of things, he used parables to kind of hide truth a little bit. And you might be surprised that I say that, but Jesus both uses parables to explain truth to people, and he also uses parables to keep truth hidden at times. And there's genius in Jesus' teaching here I want us to pay attention to. Listen to Mark chapter 4. Jesus is recorded by saying this. When Jesus was, or it's recorded, Mark says this, when Jesus was alone with the 12 disciples and the others that gathered around, they asked him what the parables meant. And he replied, "You are permitted to understand the secret of the kingdom of God, but I use parables for everything I say to outsiders so that the scriptures may be fulfilled. When they see what I do, they will learn nothing. And when they hear what I say, they will not understand. Otherwise, they will turn to me and be forgiven." And later, just in that same chapter, later on, Jesus says, anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. See, the point is that Jesus is teaching in parables for two kind of basic reasons. First, to explain truth in a real way for us to kind of grasp a little bit around, but also to keep it hidden. And the key question is, are we people who dare to ask questions and have our curiosity piqued that we might care enough to understand the truth? So he uses parables to explain things to us, but there's a responsibility on the listener to not just expect to be spoon-fed truth, but to have a desire to unpack it, to understand it, to have curiosity, to kind of peek underneath the hood a little bit and understand a little bit. To not just wait for Jesus to just kind of plop it down on your laps, but to have a curiosity behind it. To be curious enough to stick around with Jesus and ask more questions. See, like I said, the disciples didn't get it all the time. They didn't quite understand it. But what they did right was they stuck around long enough and asked why. They stuck around Jesus long enough and they asked, what does that mean? And when they asked what it was meant and what was going on, they had soft, curious hearts. Then Jesus opened up deep truths about the kingdom of God, about heaven, about life with Him, about our life, and about life with Him eternal. When you stick around long enough with curiosity, then deep truths are opened up to your heart that you may live eternally, both now and the rest of eternity. But when you're sitting back expecting for God to just kind of open it up and spoon feed it, when Jesus is teaching in parables, and unless you're curious enough to know the deep meaning behind it, then it may be still hidden. It may be poetic, it may be nice things to say, but you may miss the deeper meaning. So there's a responsibility on the listener of the parable to encounter the parable with a question: what does this mean? How can I understand this? What does this teach me about the kingdom of heaven and about my life? I pray that you would be curious today and not just expect me or any other pastor or teacher to just simply spoon feed you truth, but you would be curious. I pray that your curiosity would pique about the kingdom of heaven and you would stick around Jesus long enough to ask why, to ask some more questions, and that deep truths may be opened up to your soul, to your spirit, that you may live with Him. So the parable we're going to look at this morning may be familiar to those that have been around church for any length of time, but it's found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. All three of the synoptic gospels record it, but I'm just going to read it from the Matthew's account. It's in Matthew chapter 13. It's really short. It's 2 verses. Matthew chapter 13, verses 31 and 32. Jesus said this. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of all garden plants. It becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, he said, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants. It becomes a tree so that the birds come and perch in its branches. Most of the parables have one dominant teaching. Most parables have one kind of dominant lesson that you can learn about the kingdom of heaven from it. And this one is similar. And its dominant lesson we can learn is that the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven is expansive. It's expansive. Jesus says like a mustard seed when it's planted. Though it's small, when it's planted, when it takes root, it grows into a giant tree. Jesus is teaching us that the nature of the kingdom of heaven is to start out small, but it is to expand. It is to grow. It is to have a transformational impact on the world around it. So much so that birds can come and find shelter and can perch in its branches. See, the kingdom, we are told, the promised kingdom in Genesis 12, we're told is to be a global impact. God tells Abraham in Genesis 12, we talked about this last week, but he tells Abraham that you are going to be a blessing and that all nations on the earth will be blessed through you. That the kingdom of heaven, a part of the nature of the kingdom of heaven is to expand, to grow, that all nations would see and to be blessed by this kingdom of heaven. And then the image that Jesus uses of birds coming and perching in its branches is this image that all peoples will come and grow. It's not just for one individual family. It's not just for one individual people group or one type of person, but all peoples will come to find a home and safety and security in the branches of the kingdom of heaven. And for this expanding nature of the kingdom, friends, we should be praying for that and celebrating it when we see it. We should be praying that we would see more of God's people and more of God's kingdom expanding in our world, both here in Lima and across the world. We ought to pray for it and look for it and celebrate it. Our mission statement starts off with the word inviting. Inviting. Because as a church family, we never want to lose sight of the truth that the kingdom of heaven is to be expanding. So we invite people into this walk with Christ. We invite people from wherever you are in your spiritual journey with Jesus, we invite people to begin a process of understanding life with God. We never want to lose sight of the fact that the kingdom of heaven is by nature to be expansive. We never want to lose sight that we just be this holy huddle, this little social club that we just kind of like what we have going on here, but we want to see the kingdom expand. And so our mission statement starts with the word inviting, because we never want to lose sight of the fact that God's kingdom is to be one expanding around the world, to have a global impact on lives and ministries and people and families to be restored and bodies to be healed and to be restored and to be mended back together. And so our mission statement is simple, and it starts simply by inviting people. We want to be a kingdom kind of people. We want to see His kingdom expand, because the nature of the kingdom, Jesus says, is to be expansive, to grow, to have more people come, to have a relationship with God through Jesus, to have unhindered access to God and His life right here and right now, to have more people experience forgiveness of their rebellious, sinful ways, and to have more lives restored and more marriages healed and more people come to an understanding of who God is. We see more of that happening in our lives. So friends, we should pray for this diligently and celebrate it when people come to know Jesus. The kingdom of God is an expansive kingdom. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that expands, Jesus says. But there's something else about this parable that you can read and see about the kingdom. Because the kingdom of heaven, while it's expansive, Jesus says, there's a hiddenness. There's a hidden quality to the kingdom of heaven as well. While it is meant, and it will one day expand to have this global impact where all people will know and recognize Jesus as the King Himself, while it will do this, while the promise will come true, the kingdom is also found tucked away inside a tiny little mustard seed. The kingdom of heaven is found tucked away in the tiniest of seeds, waiting for the right conditions so that it can take root and emerge and expand. The kingdom of heaven, while it is expansive, also has a hidden nature, a smallness to the kingdom. Throughout the Gospels, you see Jesus perfectly manifesting the ways of the kingdom as He walks, as He teaches, as He meets with people. but he does it in a very meaningful, powerful, but extremely personal way. Extremely personal way. You see what he did. He cared for the downcast. He healed the individual. He saw through all the crowds and he saw the hurting person that needed a touch of redemption. He saw the multitudes and he saw the individual. When Jesus walks around and he teaches and he heals, he does it in very meaningful, powerful, but extremely personal ways. Personal ways. These are signs of the kingdom, where people are fed, where brokenness is healed, where relationships are restored, where people are experiencing peace and harmony, forgiveness and reconciliation, where we learn to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and we're learning to love our neighbor as ourselves. And Jesus perfectly demonstrates that for us in the Gospels. We see him doing that in our midst. But there's still people that need to be healed. Jesus didn't heal everybody. There's still people that need to be clothed. Jesus didn't clothe everybody. There's still people that are hungry. Jesus didn't snap his fingers and feed everybody. There's still people that have relationships that are broken. Jesus didn't wave his arms around the world and just instantly solve everything. So what kind of impact did Jesus have? He never moved very far away from his hometown. He never wrote a book. He didn't get on a plane and travel around the world. He didn't have any of this massive global impact. So what kind of impact does Jesus really make? Healing a few people, teaching a few things? Still there's hungry people. Still there are broken people. See, the truth is you and I, we want big, flashy, big bang for your buck kind of crowds and multitudes, but Jesus wants personal and healing, closeness, mustard seed like kingdom. Jesus is interested in the individual healing. Jesus is interested in the personal ways in which the kingdom come about. It's when we see God's people learning to live faithful in the small things. In the small things. Trusting and believing that in those small steps of faithful obedience is packed with the power to transform the world. In the small things. It's packed with the power to transform the world. Jesus had to remind his disciples constantly about the humbleness of the kingdom. That the kingdom of heaven is when you welcome that child, he says. The kingdom of heaven comes and is seen when you forgive that person. When you seek to not retaliate or pay back or have vengeance on that person, you see the kingdom of heaven. When you decide to live faithfully obedient in small ways, you see the kingdom of heaven bursting on the scene like a mustard seed, which may seem small and insignificant, but when it takes root, it grows to a large tree where the birds can come and take perch in its branches. It's what one scholar says it this way. He says, while it's characteristic of all seeds to be small, it is their characteristic also to be alive. To be alive. The kingdom of heaven may seem small, but it is alive and active. And the way in which we make an eternal impact is through personal, small, faithfully obedient ways to the kingdom's way, the kingdom's values, the way he sees this world. Personally. Not big and flashy, not to the multitudes, but to the individual, to the personal. It's when you purpose yourself to learn to live the way of love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, or self-control. It's when you decide to purpose yourself to align your life with the teachings of Jesus, the way of Jesus, that the kingdom of heaven is bursting on the scene. And it may seem like a mustard seed. It may seem like it's small and it's insignificant, but even the right environment and the right roots, and it begin to dig down, and then this mustard seed tree, and it expands. As people purpose themselves to the ways of God, then the kingdom of heaven shows up. Even small ways, but it shows up. I read a story about a church in Chicago who they saw a need in their community, and they stepped in to be a solution. Some years ago, there were some rival gangs that were warring against each other across town, and they were kind of their places, or they're kind of bunkered in adjacent to an elementary school. And many of their fights would end in gunfire. And one day, some children were caught in the crossfire. And after the shooting, the kids were afraid to go to school, as you can imagine. And attendance in this elementary school dropped to around 20% of people that would even want to go to school. And the politicians and the city council and the people around weren't really much help for the immediate need of helping to have these kids feel safe, that they were secure, that they were okay. So a local church decided to do something. Not by fighting violence with violence, not by picketing, not by going around and going to the gangs and demanding that they stop, not by doing that. They simply decided to become what they called walking school buses. And they walked to the projects where these kids lived, and they walked them to school, shielding them from gunfire with their own bodies, protecting them so that they would feel safe. And their efforts in a very short period of time, the attendance of that school went from 20% back up to 98% because kids felt safe. Now let me ask you, did walking school buses solve violence in Chicago? No. Did it stop the gang violence that was happening so rampant in that community? No. But mustard seed kind of kingdom showed up. Kids felt loved. They felt protected. They felt safe. The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, and it shows up like that. Just this week, on Wednesday, I had an opportunity to sit with Randy from our Daily Bread Soup Kitchen here in Lima. And then we were serving lunch, and a team of us go there on a regular basis. And it was my turn to be there, and I was there, and they were serving out the lunch already. And I sat with Randy. And as I sat with Randy in his office, just a couple of guys came in a couple of times, and they just needed something. Like one guy needed a hat, one guy needed some body wash to wash up, take a shower. And in the middle of our conversation, Randy stopped our conversation, got up and fumbled around some boxes and stuff and found a knit cap, and he tossed it to a guy and said, "Here, that'll keep you warm for a while." The other guy needed some body wash, and he said, "Give me about 5 or 6 minutes, I'll find some for you. I'm sure I've got some." And he got up and he did it. Randy is one of these guys that just quietly serves without fanfare, without making a big scene about it, without doing anything, just faithfully in the small things. Now, on Wednesday, that day, did Randy solve homelessness in Lima? Did he eliminate all of hunger in Lima? No. But I'll tell you what, the kingdom of God, like a mustard seed, showed up that day. And those guys walked out of Randy's office, and they felt loved. They felt noticed. They felt like they mattered. And they felt like God hadn't given up on them. The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. Jesus, it doesn't have to be big and flashy. It doesn't have to be world-shattering. It has to be faithful. It has to be faithful. See, your job and my job isn't to change all the world's problems, isn't to come along and to be big and care about the multitudes and the crowds and all that stuff. Our job is to be faithful in mustard seed kind of kingdom work. Small, faithful ways. But in all of this, I started asking the question, is that enough? I mean, is it enough that Randy just gives out a hat or some body wash? Is it enough that this church just walked these kids to school? Is that enough? Is that all we can do? Is that really enough? Is that all we can really hope for? I don't think so. I don't think so, because I want to see the kingdom of God expand. I want to see where every kid feels safe. I don't think it's enough that a handful of kids in one elementary school feel safe. I want the whole world's kids to feel safe. I don't think it's enough that we have a few kids that have been, have a CASA worker. I want every kid in the system to have a CASA worker. Truth be told, I want the system to go away and to have every kid be cared for and loved for by God's people who watch over them in mustard seed kind of way. I pray for that kind of stuff. I don't think it's enough to just give out body wash and a few little things. I'm praying that one day the promised kingdom will come and that peace and harmony and restoration and forgiveness will rule the day. But until that day comes, I'm going to work my tail off. Saved it there, Matt. Yeah. And I'm going to work in mustard seed kind of ways. And I'm going to be faithful in small ways. Because while the kingdom of God may be like a mustard seed, he promises that it will grow and it will expand and it will have a transformational kind of work. So mustard seed kind of stuff is enough if you recognize the potential that God can do when you plant a mustard seed in the right kind of soil. The kingdom of heaven may seem little, but it is alive, packed with possibilities of transforming. And one day God's will shall be done on earth as it is in heaven. So what does that mean for us? If that's Jesus' picture of the kingdom of heaven, then what does that mean practically? What does that mean for you and I? How can we do this in a way? Well, God calls us to live by faith, to start off with small acts of righteousness. Even though they may go unnoticed, they may go kind of completely underground, but we live a life of faithfulness to learn to love God with all of who we are and to learn to love our neighbor as ourselves. And we trust and believe that that kind of life contains within it power and transformative nature to transform a family, to transform a community, and eventually transform the world. But we start off with living faithful lives. So first thing we do, be faithful. Be faithful. We talked about these notions of the fruit of the Spirit as we did last week with these cards of peace and joy and patience and kindness and goodness and the rest of them. We talked about how we might just simply learn to live that way. So my encouragement for us as we continue in this understanding of the kingdom of heaven, be faithful in that. Be faithful in that. And never underestimate the power of an individual life that is committed to living faithfully in the details of your life. Not flashy and big, but in the small ways, learning to live a life of obedience, learning to live by love or joy or peace or patience or goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, or self-control. Never underestimate the power of an individual life decidedly, purposefully living the way of the kingdom in your individual life. Because the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, and it begins with small steps of faithfulness, of obedience. Second thing to do, and that is that we need to recognize the calling to be a blessing. See, in order for the seed to make an impact in the world, in order for that seed to transform and make an impact, it has to be planted. It has to be planted. It can't stay in its little package. And there's a temptation for some of us to think about our spiritual life as just between me and God. Well, I'm going to seek to learn to be a more loving and more patient, more kind, more gentle, more whatever kind of person. And that's just a nice thing for me to do. But the parable of the mustard seed is that it reminds us is that the kingdom's purpose is to have a transformational impact and effect in this world around us. That it would change the landscape for people. So we need to be a blessing. God's people are meant to be a blessing to those around us. In kingdom ways and in even mustard seed kinds of ways. So this week, what I'm going to ask us to do is add to our tree. Last week, we had the aspects of the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, and the rest of them. This week, I'm going to ask you to choose one person that's outside the family of God. Choose one person that you are intentionally going to bless this week. And it doesn't have to be earth-shattering, right? One person that you can choose to be a blessing. It may be that you call them and you just simply want to know what's going on and you choose to intentionally listen to them. And you bless them by your presence and listening. It may be taking them out for coffee. It may be doing something for them. It may be something else. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering or big and flashy. It just needs to be faithful. Choose one person this week that you're going to be purposeful in being a blessing. One person. Plant a mustard seed of kingdom ways and just watch how God may choose to bless you and to grow that mustard seed into something that's transformative in the world around you. So here's how we're going to respond to this teachings of Jesus. First, we're going to respond by communion, which is good for us to come to the Lord's table monthly to be reminded of the faith and the grace that is ours because of Jesus. So we're going to come and we're going to receive, once again, recognize the gift that is ours because of Christ and his shed blood on the cross. But we're also coming recognizing that as recipients of God's kingdom, we are to be agents of a blessing to those around us. So here's what we're going to do. You can come, receive communion, and then you might have noticed when you came in on the backs of your sections, back there's other tables with slips of paper and more pens. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to think about one name, one person who's outside the family of God, and I want you to think of how you're going to bless them this week. And so after receiving communion, you're going to cycle back around behind your section, and you're going to write the name of that person, just their first name. And you're going to drop that name in the basket that's there. And we're going to see our tree blossom and grow as we see kingdom people purposing ourselves to live kingdom lives this next month, this next few weeks. So come and receive communion, cycle around your section, and in the back of your section, go back and write a name. Purpose yourself this week to be a blessing to those around you. The kingdom of heaven, Jesus says, is like a mustard seed. Though it's the smallest seed, when it's planted in the garden, it grows. And it becomes such a tree that the birds come and find perching inside it. May we be faithful. May we be a blessing. And may we experience the expansion of the kingdom of heaven all around us as we're faithful to him.